So he thinks by July 2026, Tesla is bankrupt.
Yes.
And he bet 20 grand on that.
Yeah.
I congratulate you on having an extra 20 grand in a year and a half.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Patience is a talent.
I mean, look, bro, to turn $4,000 into $1 million, you just got to 4x your portfolio four times.
All right, guys. So welcome to the very first episode of the pod, and we have a very special guest. Basically, he is a market enthusiast that I really love to follow on X, and I'm going to link his X account down below. If you are into the markets at all, he provides amazing, colorful commentary 24/7. I think he's chronically online like I am, so that's the part I love. I see him tweeting at all times during the day and night. So if you want any and every market, macro, economy news, he's got to follow. So really quick, introduce yourself. What got you excited about the markets, and what got you here? Basically, I'm really curious to know.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me on. Really excited to be the first guest on the 444 Capital podcast. I guess I started getting into markets around 2021. I mean, I've been in markets since 2018. Didn't really participate in the COVID pandemic 2020 run up. Really didn't know what I was doing. Definitely lost money in that time. And then 2021, I kind of doubled down trying to understand what was going on. Bought a couple names. Those names fell 80%, held on to those names, kind of learned what it means to read a company's financials, balance sheet, all that stuff. And then I kind of just got hooked because what I see the market as is a vehicle for financial freedom. And in that vehicle, to be good at driving that vehicle, you've got to know about all the different events that are happening when it comes to the macro economy, earnings, et cetera. And so to me, I think of it as a game. It's a really exciting game. My background is in speech and debate. And a lot of times in speech and debate, you're trying to communicate arguments to get people's attention. And I think of the market as just all these different companies communicating different arguments, and whichever ones get people's attentions are the ones that are going to have stock prices that go higher. And so that got me hooked, and I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, I think we're fairly similar as far as the stock market goes. I've been in it for a while, but didn't get really into it until I'm mostly in crypto. So I've been in crypto since 2017 personally. And I've been overly exposed way too much. So I'm looking to, at this point in my life, entering my 30s, I'm looking to kind of de-risk a little bit and move most of my crypto portfolio into the stock market. And again, 2022, that was such an amazing opportunity. That was a terrible year in the markets, but a great year if you were paying attention. And, I was able to, level up my stock portfolio quite a bit. And I'm like, oh, just like you, I was like, let me start digging into earnings and reading these reports and actually not looking at charts like the average retail investor. And it's been amazing. So I think we share a similar story. Okay, so what I want to get to in this pod is Tesla. I'm pretty sure from, following you on Twitter that we share the same excitement for the company. I know the average person just thinks Tesla is, this company that is a car company and makes just these EVs. So I want to dig in because I feel like we have some good insight on the actual vision of the company. Before we start glazing Tesla, I want to start off with a critical statement from both of us about the company. So we're not only talking positive things. What's a critique that you would give Tesla if you had to?
A critique. So I think they are sometimes wildly ambitious without living up to the timelines on their ambitions. And I think 2025, if the stock goes further from here, it's because they are matching their ambitious targets. And if it goes down, it's because they're not going to match those targets. So that would be a critique just in terms of look, they want to do a lot of things and they're in a lot of different areas, which is kind of why Tesla is a sort of diversified ETF in all these different businesses. But can they actually deliver the execution to match the growth? I mean, the past 2 years, the growth has been relatively flat, if not negative. In a lot of parts, energy has been growing well, but the actual core auto business has been slowing down, high rates, a little bit harder in the macro. I do see tailwinds for that to get better, but my biggest critique is that they got to get back to growing. And when they do that, I think the stock will reflect it as well.
That's a great point. I was going to kind of say the same thing. I feel like they're sometimes overly ambitious. And I mean, Elon, he can't help it. He thinks in decades. So most people aren't like that, especially the investors, right? But the fact that you said growth is kind of slumped, that kind of leads me to the next point. So the 24 numbers we kind of have for the car business and everything, and it was kind of a flat year. Are we thinking that is a bad thing? Was it just an EV cool down? Because, we saw a lot of EV companies struggling quite a bit in the industry. And was Tesla's growth slump related to the overall EV sentiment? Or is it just because maybe they have the new models on the horizon and they're kind of trying to focus on 2025 as like the next growth wave of the refreshed Model Y, potentially the new model that we'll talk about later in this video. Do you think that's a worry?
Well, I think rates were just high the past 2 years, right? And like we went from 0 interest rates to 5.5%. It's really hard to finance an automobile or even a house during that time. So I think that was their biggest issue. The other thing is the stock, went to $1 trillion in 2021. It didn't deserve to be at $1 trillion. So naturally, there was going to be a little bit of a decline there. So the stock falling was, I think, less about the business not doing as good, more so about like it just wasn't supposed to be at those elevated levels like a lot of stocks in 2021. But I think the core point of Tesla is to sell a vision of the future where people don't have to drive their cars. Mm-hmm. And I know we'll get into FSD and autonomy, but that is it. If they figure that out, which I think they will, I think, the company does a lot better than they are right now. All the sort of headwinds and macroeconomic dynamics about why the cars aren't selling, like all of that is noise to me, because if that issue is solved, people don't have to drive. They can just sit in the car drives themselves. We have a really big winner on our hands. And Tesla's already been a really big winner, but it's hard to keep growing at the scale that they're at unless they have something really innovative. And selling an electric vehicle is not innovative. But selling an electric vehicle that can drive itself is very innovative. In terms of the idea of people having like a mixed review on EVs in general, I think, yes, in the past couple of years, even Tesla themselves told us that hybrids are getting more popular than the traditional EV. But, if an EV can drive itself, I think people will get really excited for that.
That's the edge. Yeah. And I don't know where I stand on hybrids. I have a feeling, just like a gut feeling, that hybrids, because they're in both worlds, they kind of have 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah.
And when the door slams, when FSD is live and EVs are kind of like, everybody realizes, okay, EVs are inevitable, right? I feel like hybrids are just going to get cut in half. When the door slams, they're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I just don't see how they have like double the parts, double the reliance on both electric and gasoline. I'm not really sold. I'm kind of bearish on hybrids, to be honest. I understand they're, fairly cheap. They have great range and all that, but I'm just not convinced. Essentially, I think for EVs, the great thing is you can have a gas station in your driveway, in your apartment building, anywhere. So I think it's a much better experience, like user experience. We hear this all the time. Like the bear case is that Tesla's a car company and they're way overvalued because of it. But I couldn't disagree more, and I know you're the same. But just last night, I was talking to my parents' friends, like family friends, and they're like an older couple, like 60 or something in the 60s. They actually were talking about how they took a Waymo for the first time, and they were like, it was really cool. And then the fact that I drive a Tesla came up, and they're like, oh, really? You drive a Tesla? And I was very surprised to know that they had no idea Tesla has self-driving capability. There was like, their question was, well, so does it have like all the sensors like the Waymo? And I was like, no, it's just cameras. And the fact that like the auto summon feature was there, they were just kind of like mind blown. And I was like, wow, like most people just don't know what a Tesla, they just think it's just like this car that's electric, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a learning curve to kind of, I don't think that's like an issue. It'll happen naturally when people like me are telling, hey, look, the car drive itself. And I've given a lot of like test drives to my friends, like get behind the wheel and have it drive you. So I don't think that's like a marketing issue at all, but it's just kind of like a growth opportunity because it's not well known that Teslas can have all these capabilities. So do you think it is a car company? Why or why not?
Well, yeah, Tesla's more than a car company to me just because of the underlying technology that governs the growth story of the business. So like selling cars is not where the growth is going to come from. And it did back in 15 to 2020 because, EVs were a lot more popular back then in terms of just people getting exposed to the idea of them. But this is a story where the level of data that Tesla has, which is proprietary in terms of all these cars driving on the street and capturing that data via FSD miles. I think it's upwards of 20, 30 billion miles of data they've collected.
Crazy. Yeah.
All of that data trains their models. When we talk about AI, everyone talks about AI. This is the real world manifestation of what AI is. There's ChatGPT, LLMs, and we still have a long way to go in terms of what that looks like. But then you got Tesla, which all those models are manifesting itself into something that makes you more productive, which is being in the car, not having to worry about actually driving the car. I mean, I just got back from an FSD drive. It was a 10-minute drive, but just the very nature of the fact that I don't have to make the turn. I don't have to get the exit. I don't have to worry about the person walking on the street and me stopping the car because the actual vehicle is good enough to do it. That's what makes me believe. And I was skeptical about this for the past couple of years. So to me, I think it's a much more authentic thing coming from me because I just didn't believe it until I experienced it, which is, I think, a similar story for a lot of people. It makes you realize this is not a automotive company because no other automotive company can do this. It's just that simple. Now, the premium you want to pay on the stock because of that technology is subjective and the market has to determine that. But the underlying technology, I think, does differentiate it from a car company. And then, we'll talk about Optimus and robots, but that also is a whole another layer that makes it not a car company to me. So they make their money with cars, but I think cars are a Trojan horse to make their money with software eventually.
I agree. I think they're the only company that makes cars that can earn revenue after the first sale, right? So if you buy Toyota, right, whether it's from the dealership or whatever, Toyota can never make money from you again, really, right? Maybe like parts you can argue, but when you get a Tesla, you can upgrade self-driving. They have other acceleration upgrades. I use only superchargers, so that's constant revenue from anybody charging the car, whether I'm the fifth owner of the car, the first owner, the second or the third. They can keep monetizing off of their older models, which is insane to me. So it's kind of like a software company mixed with the car company, mixed with so many different like overlapping segments. I understand why people view it as a car company because again, like they don't know. But for the first time I took a FSD drive, full self-driving, was like a little over a year ago, and it brought a smile to my face. Like it was pretty crazy. And ever since then, like I understood it wasn't perfect, but just using like plain logic, every update is getting better and better. So if you're betting against the updates getting worse, I just don't understand how that logic works. Like it's increasingly getting better. And I think the way this works is there's going to be one update that is going to be, I think they're 90% of the way there, but that last 10% always takes as much as the first 90 did.
Correct.
So it's going to be like one over the air update, and it's going to be like night and day. Maybe it's not that drastic, but I feel like they're really close. Maybe they're even 92% of the way there now. So it's only a matter of time. And I think that is slowly being realized right now. And that's why the stock is at such a premium, because when that is unlocked, it's just like all bets are off. And, aside from the other things that we're going to talk about, but when it comes to self-driving, right, it's a competitive field right now, but I don't think it's that competitive really. I think Waymo is the most interesting. But again, the trade-offs of like the expensive sensors and their geofence into a city is something to think about, because also you can't own a Waymo car, right? I don't know if I forgot the numbers, but there's like 900 of them on the roads. They're doing great.
Yeah.
Something like that, right? 900, 1,000 maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, Waymo is just like it's a whole different lane, I think, compared to Tesla. So, but I do think Waymo is showing us product market fit, right? The Robotaxis are like out there being used. They're crushing it in their respective like cities and little areas. That's definitely like the one stat that blew my mind away. I'm not sure if you heard it, but in San Francisco in the last like 15, 16 months, Waymo's market share went from 0 to 22%, and they're tied with Lyft, I believe.
Yeah, I did see that one.
That's pretty crazy. So Uber before that had like 64, Lyft had the remaining 30, whatever. And now Waymo in 15 months took a decent market share from both of them. And now Lyft is getting squeezed. Yeah, I think that's if that's not product market fit, I don't know what is. So what's your take on Waymo?
Well, I see Waymo as something that's really cool. Obviously, they're not using the same technology as Tesla. They're more on the LiDAR side versus Tesla neural nets for training. In general, my understanding of Waymo is that a lot of the area they're allowed to operate in is geofenced, which makes it more safe. But obviously, that's not the vision that Tesla's going with for Robotaxi. Tesla's going for anywhere, anytime. You call the car, it picks you up, and you're good to go. I do think Waymo is very strategic in that they've got Google as a backer. They just raised, I think, $5 billion, or maybe $5 billion was the valuation they raised that, but they raised a lot of outside money, so they're well capitalized, and they're doing 150,000 paid rides a week, which is incredible. So to me, Waymo is just a case study on the overall TAM and the market opportunity. I mean, if Waymo can get away with 150,000 paid rides a week, you would imagine when Tesla has unsupervised FSD, could they get that to 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 rides a week, if not 1 million rides a week over time? And then if people enjoy a Robotaxi over a Waymo and it's competitively priced, because Tesla should have better unit economics on it, then it's going to be a world where Tesla, Uber, Waymo, and Lyft compete. And if you believe Tesla is able to capture at least 20% of that market, I think that's where the math gets really fun in terms of where the stock could be as well.
Do you think the Robotaxi world is a winner takes most, or do you think there's going to be a fair split? Because I mean, in the Uber and Lyft world and like in the ride hail world, Uber basically is a winner take most, and there's nobody really that's close. So what's your take on the Robotaxi? Like once Tesla gets there, do you think they just swallow the rest of the market share or a majority of it? Or do you think there's going to be a lot of competition, unlike ride hail apps?
I think it's going to be who offers the best experience, because like I used the Lyft yesterday because it was like a couple bucks cheaper than an Uber, right? And that was it. That's all I cared about. So in this industry, it's very simple. It's like if you're the cheapest, you're probably going to get the business. And then for self-driving, you want to feel the safest, right? Because it's weird if a random car picks you up and, there's always that hesitation. So, I mean, if Tesla can get it down to be cheaper, which I think they have the math to subsidize these rides to make them as cheap, given there's already millions of cars on the road and you have these fleet of cars, they can operate whenever they want. And you just have people buying up fleets of cars, which means they can unleash them out throughout the day.
Yeah.
Like if Robotaxis are cheaper than Waymo, people are going to use it. Now they might pay a little bit of a premium if they feel safer in a Robotaxi than a Waymo, and maybe a little bit even more than a small premium because it's their safety, life or death. But I think this is going to be closer to 2 people win. I don't think this is going to be 5 or 6 winners in this market.
The one issue that I see with, like, let's say if it's Waymo, is availability.
Yeah.
Like, I think price matters for sure. But I don't think they're going to be so far off between each other, like what their competitive pricing is, that it's going to make much of a difference. But if Waymo can only have 1,000, or let's say 10, 20,000 cars, and Tesla can have 1 million or even 200,000, just thinking, like, from my experience, when we're at a friend's house and we're about to go to a bar or a concert, wherever, everybody's pulling up the phone for Uber or Lyft and checking the closest one. If one's like 5 minutes away versus like Lyft is like 13 minutes away, even if the price is a little more, especially like after when everybody's like leaving an event, a concert, a club, I don't think people even care about the price. They just want to go home. And if it's available, they're going to do it. So if Tesla can have 10 or 100 times more availability, which that's the benefit of Elon's vision. Like, once they get FSD to be like there, and they can just push it out to all the cars that are existing and, cyber cabs on the road, I don't know how Waymo is going to, if they're sticking to their LiDAR and sensor based vision, I just don't know how they can compete. So in that sense, I don't see anybody else that can keep, at least at this point, like if this happens in the next 2 to 3 to even 4 years, I don't think Waymo can scale there. And they're also geofenced as well. So I just think the availability of Tesla is going to crush it. That's not talked about enough. I think more people focus on the prices, the unit economics, but you're talking like, let's say 10,000 cars versus 1 million. It doesn't really matter the price, right? If the demand is there, it's there. So that's kind of my take on it. I'm not sure what you think.
No, I agree. And I think more people, like, I've decided I'm going to start paying the $99 subscription for FSD because I'm like, can't live without it anymore. I just can't. So like, that's an additional stream of revenue that obviously is not really factored into the stock because not a lot of people are paying for FSD yet. Eventually, when people are officially like, all right, I'm on board, that's like what, 90% margins on that $99 a month? It's
crazy.
So when
I don't know what the take rate is today, but I'm guessing it's fairly small, single digits, 10% max.
I would imagine so. And that combined with what they're getting on Robotaxis, I know the stock is extended from a historical perspective. I mean, trading at a 200 PE obviously is expensive, but people are buying the narrative on Tesla. And that narrative so far seems to be playing out. Now, something could mess up the narrative. It's obviously going to be a volatile narrative if earnings doesn't go well, but that is the future. Like, I've kind of come to the conclusion after experiencing it, this is not going backwards. As you said, it's only getting better. So why would you not want to invest in the future?
And that's the crazy part. So like, I've clashed with a lot of the Tesla Q folks on Twitter, on X. It's just insane to me. And I think it's mostly like, these are like sober grown adults that are, I think they have their hatred for Elon is like fogging their vision, but it's just, I don't get it.
Well, people are ideological. People are dogmatic. People are not able to actually understand. Like, whatever you politically believe about the guy, to me, is fundamentally irrelevant. It's about what he's done. And it is, it blows my mind that people who have not done 1/1000th of what he's done on this planet have the audacity to be like, well, I don't like that he speaks this way in this respect. I'm like, the idea that you could build, 7 or 8 multi-$100 billion companies that he has, with $1 trillion company, SpaceX probably going to $1 trillion as well. So like the idea that someone could do that by themselves, put that into the world, create so much prosperity and wealth, so many products and services that people love, and then you have a issue with his political affiliations.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
I don't know the type of brainwash that these people are consuming, because it's obviously media propaganda that gets them to think this. Otherwise, you can't hate someone who does that. Like, it's unbelievable. So I think from that perspective, those people will eventually come around, because the future for their transportation needs are also going to be self-driving. And whether they like Elon or not, they're going to buy his products, and it is what it is.
Yeah, no, it's insane. And I don't know, I'm guessing you don't know, but I actually have an ongoing bet with this one guy whose whole personality is an Elon / Tesla bear hater. Like he has a whole newsletter. He has like that's this whole thing on the platform. And all he does is post only bears, like, oh, this earnings is terrible. Their China sales is like slowing down. He's been doing that for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
And the whole way up, as everything's getting better, not just price, he just doubles down. And so I took him up on a bet because we're going back and forth. And I was like, it's going to be a rough 5 years for you, because I was poking fun of like his post when the price rallied last July. And he was like, yeah, it's if they survive the next 2 years. I was like, survive? I was like, okay, let's make a bet, right? You seem like, because he is like very knowledgeable in the automotive like world. Yeah, that's like that's his thing. So he took me up on the bet, and I can't believe he gave me these odds, but essentially his side of the bet was, if Tesla is trading he thinks Tesla's going to be trading at $50 a share by next July, 2026, which is like I don't know, what is that, 160 billion market cap.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I'll take that any day. So we put up 20 big ones, and it's crazy.
That is that Tesla's going to what?
He thinks their automotive business is burning so much cash that they're going to go bankrupt and crash and burn, essentially. And he's always pushing the thing that like Elon, they cook their books. This is the biggest fraud ever. Like that.
When is the end date on the bet?
July 2026.
So he thinks by July 2026 Tesla is bankrupt.
Yes.
And he bet 20 grand on that.
Yeah.
I congratulate you on having an extra 20 grand in a year and a half. That'll be fun.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's the most genius person in the world and he sees something we don't, but that's the kind of people that are, betting against Elon. And I think their ego and their just like whatever conspiratory hatred is just getting in the way of them just losing all this money. But it's funny to me. He's the most polarizing person in the world, I think, right now.
Yeah.
So I get it. I mean, if there's people that still believe in flat Earth, there's going to be people that believe that Tesla will never get to self-driving or is this and that. So it is what it is. But one other thing that came on my radar is what I call the merger games. And I feel like there's some merit that there will be a race for the super app in the ride-hail food delivery crossover business. And there's been talks that so the buyers, I think, in this scenario would be Google, because they have Waymo. Amazon has Woox, is it called? Their self-driving car. I think it's like Woox.
Yep.
So Amazon, Google, and Tesla. And then those would be like the buyers, and the potential sellers could be Uber, could be Lyft, DoorDash. And I think there's going to be, in the next 12 to 24 months, some acquisitions. Like somebody's going to get acquired. In the All-In Pod, they were saying that Tesla could easily buy Uber for like 10% of their market cap in shares right now. Lyft is so much cheap that could just be bought in cash by any of those big three.
Yep.
But I think it makes sense to consolidate, because once you unlock self-driving, food delivery and ride hailing go hand in hand. So do you think there's any possibility, and have you heard any of those rumors as well of those big three acquiring? Because I think Lyft is definitely going to get acquired. If I had to make a bet, I would say in the next 1 to 2 years, they have a very likely chance of being swallowed up by either Google, Tesla, Amazon, whoever it is. But yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting angle.
Yeah, I mean, that part is confusing because, how does the Robotaxi deliver the food? You still need a person to go inside of the Popeyes, get the food, and then go into the car to deliver to someone. So I am a bit confused on that. Maybe there is an integration they do that is competitive against Uber Eats, where you have a driver get into a Robotaxi. Like I'm still confused on how that would work. Deliveries in general are a big business. Obviously, Uber Eats is massive from that perspective. I just think they've got to figure out how to get people hooked onto the Robotaxi versus Uber. Once they do that, you can add all these different preliminary services on top of it. But if they get people to start ordering Robotaxis over Ubers, I mean, it is going to be a pretty exciting time to see how that rivalry plays out.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to a guy who worked at Uber yesterday in New York. And, I was just like, so your stock's kind of cheap, right? It's down 20%. He's like, dude, fuck the stock. It's like, it's like they've given up on autonomy. They're not really trying for it. Like they see Tesla's eating their lunch. And so Uber still has a huge network effect, 150 million monthly users.
Yeah.
But even he was just like, I'm only there because I get paid really well, but I don't
For sure.
think this company is the future.
Didn't Uber partner with Waymo?
Yes.
For something?
Yeah.
So it looks like they're definitely showing I don't know if it's signs of interest or signs of survival, but they definitely have to do something. Partner, get acquired. it's inevitable. I don't know what they'll do.
Yeah, and I'm not bearish Uber because like everyone uses it. It's still around. But it's just when you're discounting future cash flows and you're trying to see, am I paying the correct discount rate for future growth? And the future growth you see is there's this obvious like iceberg that's in the middle of it, which is FSD. Should Uber be able to navigate that via partnerships and autonomy? Yes. Are they really building the company to get through that iceberg? I don't know if they are right now.
Yeah, they're definitely scrambling, if I had to guess internally, because I mean, just looking at Waymo, and obviously Tesla is the elephant in the room, but another like, and oh, by the way, for the delivery thing, for food delivery, I just feel like they could put it in the trunk, pop the trunk, and the person ordering the food could just get it. The benefit will be it'll be cheaper.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because like for me, like I live in an apartment building, and I can't they can't come up here anyway, so I have to go downstairs regardless. Right. So I feel like it's not a big ask, especially if you live in a house, just, you know, go down to your driveway or right outside and get it from the trunk. Especially if it's cheaper, right? I don't think people are going to mind, because right now it's pretty expensive.
No, you're 100. That is, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, like the Burger King employee puts it in the car, and the car goes to you. And that's actually, I never thought of it like that. Yeah, and if it's cheaper, I'll walk out of my house for 2 minutes and get the
For sure,
100%.
For sure. It's crazy. I mean, the Uber prices, the Uber Eats or like DoorDash, they'll add like 30% on top. Like it's insane.
Then you got to give a tip, and you feel like a dick if you don't give a tip, right?
Exactly. No, it's definitely there. There's something there for sure. And when you said you were talking to an Uber driver, it kind of reminded me of a super interesting story. This was last July. Again, I was in Europe, and I was in a taxi. The guy driving was telling me how his best friend had moved to America to do Uber in one of the big cities. I'm guessing it was probably like San Francisco or wherever it was. There was Waymo in that town, and he was telling me how his friend had to move because the Waymo was much cheaper, and he didn't get much rides. He wasn't making that much money. So in that moment, I was sitting in that car like, holy shit, this is my first time hearing a direct, like first person experience, a self-driving car disrupting a human driver. And I was just shocked. So yeah, ever since then, I'm like, yeah, it's inevitable. It's just a countdown, really.
Yeah. It would be hard to go long Uber stock right now. It could bounce back and do great after good earnings because robotaxis aren't real yet, right? But just like, maybe as a trade, but holding it, believing Uber is the future, like 10 years ago, that made sense. Yeah. Now it's a little tough.
I think there's no way around it. It's either we're going to see a huge merger partnership or acquisition with Uber and Lyft. That's just, that's my take. Great stuff. I think we're both equally bullish on self-driving. So yeah, the next part, let's talk the TAM of Optimus and humanoid robots. And I know that's like a super like vague kind of thing that maybe neither of us have like a exact pulse on, because like who knows the actual TAM, right? There's so many projections and stuff, but just like on a general high level, do you think like that's a thing, like humanoid robots could become an affordable thing people buy and have in their houses or at work? What's your take on that?
So for full disclosure, I am invested in two private humanoid robotic startups. One is called Figure.ai, and another one is called Apptronic, that's based in Texas. And I am a pretty large bull on the robotic thesis. My bullish take doesn't really come from the robots being in your house doing your dishes. I think we'll get there. It might take a decade, maybe 15 years for that to realistically happen. I am more bullish on the idea of Amazon replacing 1 million employees with 1 million robots, or Walmart, or take your pick of the hundreds of thousands of jobs that require warehouse, order, logistics, et cetera. Moving things from here to another place. Like all of this is going to be automated, and it's a question of when, not if. Because for the companies, it makes sense. Like, why would we pay an employee that has healthcare and HR and bathroom breaks when we can license a robot for 1/10 of the cost to do the exact same thing? Margin should go through the roof for those companies in terms of their ability to actually get a product out to a consumer or to a distribution warehouse or to a vendor. And for the robot companies, it's very simple. The value proposition is you are taking remedial tasks that don't really need human ingenuity to be able to get done, and you're automating it via these LLMs that are not just being used now for asking a question on ChatGPT, but rather physically embodying what a human can do, which is the nature of AGI. That's the whole thing that we're trying to achieve. Yeah. So I think it's a massive opportunity. If you do some quick math on it, my understanding is that by 2040 to 2050, we can get close to $15 trillion of gross profits off of a $30 trillion of revenue if you assume 1 billion robots are going to be sold at an average price of like $30,000 to $40,000. You put a 30 PE on that, that gets you to a $450 trillion TAM. Now, it sounds insane, but people forget that $80 trillion of GDP globally is labor. It's the biggest TAM ever. It's bigger than transportation. It's everything. If you replace that and only 10% of that market starts to get commoditized via robotics, and you get 8 trillion out of the 80 trillion, you put a PE on that, you're at a 240 trillion TAM. I mean, it gets crazy, but that's why I think Tesla optimizing the ability for them to be in a situation where they can land these multi-$100 billion contracts. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars, if not hundreds of billions of dollars of net income, not revenue. And that becomes a very big market.
Yeah. And I think automating like warehouses and those type of jobs, I'm sure there's going to be specialized robots, but I think humanoids are, and it took me a while to realize that, like Elon says, like the world is built for humans, like physically, doors, everything's built for humans. So I think that makes it very like, I think the TAM's going to be insane, because like the Amazon robots that are like wheeling around, you know, packages, and they're going to be like specialized in whatever way to fit that warehouse. But the humanoid robot is going to be like a Tesla. You could put it anywhere and it can do its job. So, man, I think that's super bullish. Also, I don't know if you've seen, but I think Unitree is the company. I don't know if they're Chinese or not, but they're already selling humanoid robots and one of those like 4-legged things on their website. You can buy it today for like fairly cheap. So it's there. Again, another thing that's like, I'm not sure what their sales are, but again, I don't even know if most 99% of people don't even know that exists. So I think we'll get there. Yeah, it's definitely like further down the line, or maybe not. I saw Elon in an interview just recently saying this year they're hoping to get to I think 10,000 robots internally in their factories. Yep. And then what do you say? Next year they're going to 10x it and then 10x it again.
Yeah. So he wants to get to 500,000 by 2027, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, he's ambitious, right? We know his timelines and he thinks like way out in the future, but if they can get that started, like even in 2 years, wow. Yeah. I'm not sure. Again, you're invested in multiple robotics. Maybe you're more in tune, but who do you think is the leader in humanoid robots? And I know that's hard to say right now, but I don't know if it's like an echo chamber that I'm in, but I am hearing that the Tesla Optimus robot is on the more advanced side, like in the top tier of humanoid robots right now, at least.
The thing about Optimus is we just don't have enough information on it, because I think Tesla's safeguarding a lot of what they're doing. I mean, they've showed us some videos here and there, but I think 2025 will be the year for robotics, not in terms of it scaling, but in terms of a lot of deals getting announced where the street starts waking up saying this is much more serious than what we thought. And my understanding, Figure has the most advanced robot. And if even just anyone watching this can go to figure.ai, go to their website, and just literally the first thing you'll see is a robot moving.
I've seen it. I've seen the movie, the trailer. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, they're working at a BMW currently with doing some parts around making cars, very small tasks, but they're doing it. And when you see it, it's just like, all right, so this is in a factory doing work right now. Now Tesla's in a factory as well internally. We just don't see it.
We don't know. Yeah.
So I would imagine Tesla and Figure are leading right now.
So the thing, I remember listening to a podcast of, I think his name is Andrej Karpathy, like the ex-Tesla engineer.
Yeah.
And he kept, he kept underlying the fact that Tesla is probably the only one that can mass produce this right now, like a humanoid robot. And that gives them a huge advantage. So do you think that's a fair assessment? I'm not sure if they could do it on the same lines, but I feel like and Elon has said this as well, that they're probably one of the only ones that could just start mass producing them very quickly. So I'm not really sure. Again, we don't really know much about production or really much at all about the Optimus robot, but do you think that is a even bigger advantage for Tesla, because they have they're really good at the production line when it comes to cars? I feel like Elon has taken his time to make sure that the production line is the most efficient, whereas all these other car makers that are, scrambling to get into the EV business, they're focusing on how can we make this car look cool, but Elon's making how can we scale this and make it the most efficient assembly line, ramp up. And I feel like because he's focused on the production just as much as a car, that's kind of why they're in that league.
Yeah, I think that is a competitive advantage they have, because to mass produce 500,000 robots, I mean, you've got to have all the technology in the vertically integrated stack to do that. And that's not easy. So if the demand is there, and Tesla is one of the only companies that can actually deliver the vehicles, right? Like NVIDIA, one of the biggest issues is their bottlenecks on making the GPUs in the first place. So I do think it's a competitive advantage. I am curious to see what Figure, Aptronic, and what these guys do in terms of being able to scale their operations, because they're still really early. And I'm imagining, they're going to be able to raise money and launch massive new warehouses and factories. But Tesla already has it. I mean, it's just replacing the car with the robot. Elon already said it's 10x less the number of parts in a robot versus a car. Wow. So scaling it and building it shouldn't be that hard for them.
Yeah. And Elon had also said that when they were like first prototyping the robot, they did like, I don't know if it was Andre or Elon. They were like, right away got started. I believe it was Elon. He said like, we were looking for OEMs to order like parts. I forgot the specific parts that were like specific to like a humanoid type robot. And they said we couldn't find anybody to sell us these things. So he was saying how they internally made everything like custom. And he was like, that is our advantage, that we are the OEMs. Like we don't have to rely on other manufacturers for parts. Like we are, again, focusing on the assembly line. So yeah, I don't know if the other companies are thinking like mass production, but Elon definitely, I feel like that's the one thing he does think about. So
right.
Yeah, another advantage possibly, again, I don't know if that's, bias or echo chamber take, but from kind of what I've heard from like Andre and Elon, that they actually are pretty far ahead on humanoid. So, okay, so let's wrap up the humanoid talk. Another interesting thing that I think is a sleeper is Tesla Energy. I've been watching the earnings as they come out the last 2 years, and energy just keep surprising and going up and to the right. And I think, the energy storage business, I think when people hear Tesla Energy, they think of the solar roofs, but I think the real part of the energy business is the mega packs that they're deploying and selling for energy storage. That's like the big bottleneck in energy right now. It's the storage. It's not so much like that they're selling the solar roofs like crazy. It's the mega packs. Do you have any take on their energy business, and where do you think that goes moving forward? Because it's starting to be a pretty significant part of their revenue, and it has high margins as well. Curious what your take is.
Yeah, it's growing faster than everything, right? So like it's growing, It has the best margins. It's growing faster than everything. It is the sector that I think none of us can deny in terms of the demand that's required. We hear all this conversation about nuclear, hear all this conversation about natural gas, and it's because all these data centers that are being created, they need energy. So it's like, we know oil and gas eventually is going to not be a thing. I mean,
for sure,
50 years.
Well, we know it. I don't know if everybody else knows it, but I think that's, pretty obvious.
Yeah. And it's so like, we need renewables, we need nuclear, we need something. So it's one of those things where I don't think the street gives it enough credit, because they can't see it really happening in the moment, but there will be a day where Tesla has a quarter where it grows 400%. And they're like, where did this demand come from? It's like, Tesla's like, yeah, we got like 7 data centers in Ireland that need more energy. It's like, I think that's inevitable.
Also, speaking of energy, I think, it's their vertical is so crazy that their supercharger network, I believe the supercharger network is like a legal monopoly at this point, because they have, I think, over 60% market share, and that's only going to keep growing. And they're so well diversified, but in their own vertical, it's insane. And the flywheel, which that's one thing we're going to talk about towards the end, the Elon's flywheel of like all his businesses and components are coming together. But energy, definitely a sleeper. If it keeps growing at the rate it is, I feel like in 12 months time, it's going to be a significant part of net income, because the margin is so good. So another just super bullish thing. I think we almost skirted around it, but Tesla semi-trucks are not talked about enough, because everybody's kind of written them off as if, we don't really see them. There's such a limited amount, but that's I think the highest employed job in the States is truck driver. So it's a huge, huge business. And I mean, I don't know how you can ignore Tesla semis, because they're already on the roads, and they're just going to keep getting better, keep, increasing in fleet size. So what's your take on Tesla semis? Is that something to think about?
Yeah, I guess we haven't gotten a ton of updates on Tesla semis, and that's why also the street's not been as focused on them. I know that Pepsi deal was like the big thing that got everyone excited. Yeah, I mean, those are coming as well, right? And it's like a lot of these things you're naming are just like call options on the stock, like the underlying business, because we know it's inevitable and it's coming down the road. But that is something that's important. A lot of logistics happens through those semi trucks in terms of delivering X, Y, Z from this location to that location. If that can happen in an autonomous way, I mean, it's just like
scary. It's scary.
My biggest fear is what happens to the drivers that lose their jobs. And I've had debates with friends, and they're like, oh, they'll get a new job. And I'm like, I don't know what privileged life you're living to think some Uber driver, taxi driver can just start doing something else. Like, I know AI is going to make more jobs, but it's not that easy for one sector to just leave and be replaced. And I think that's another, philosophical discussion that is hard to resolve, but it is a real thing that's coming.
I've definitely, when we had, I think the Amazon strike happened like a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago.
Yep.
I definitely had some discussions with friends and people online, because I quote tweeted that the Amazon strike with an Optimus robot that's smiling, and again, just like funny market commentary, right? And some people were like took the offense of like, oh, you want to displace human jobs and this and that. I'm just like, look, I don't want to. I'm just being a realist. I can see what is happening and like where we're headed, like I don't know why that wouldn't happen. Again, it is philosophical. Like it does, like the idea does suck of like I don't know, 1 million or so truck drivers being displaced or warehouse workers, but it's a touchy subject. I understand, but if at the end of the day, I feel like it's kind of hypocritical because the same people that are saying like the Amazon strike, they should get paid more and this, but you're the reason Amazon has to scale and automate everything is because you are ordering every damn day on Amazon Prime and they're forced to scale, right? So it's like, okay, do you want to use a good service and have the price of it remain the same or go down even? Or do you want, you know what I mean? I don't know if you see what I'm trying to say, but like Amazon is just reacting to the consumer demand. So if you're saying, yeah, this is not right, but like the consumer is causing automation in the factory. So like
consumers want 2-hour shipping, not 2-day shipping.
Exactly. That's
and
my
if that
point.
requires automation, then
you can't get 2-hour shipping all the time, 100% uptime with just like, you know, in the current state of things. So
right.
Touchy subject, I know, but like that's just where we're headed. You know, things get companies and capitalism, they want to get more efficient. So, okay, Model Y refresh. Thoughts, takes, ugly, beautiful, in the middle.
I'm just happy I don't have any FOMO because I got my Model Y in November with 0% APR, and people are telling me you're going to regret it. Wait for the refresh. And I saw the refresh, and I'm like, oh, regret it here. Like, it's not that it's ugly to me. I think it's fine. I don't really think it's beautiful or ugly. I just think it's not enough to get me super excited to pay 3% APR. You know, I got 0% APR, I locked that in. I'm very happy with my Tesla, and nothing else really matters to me because it was a really good financial deal. So look, I think it'll sell well. I think people were waiting for it, and I think the people that were waiting are probably happy that they got it. It probably is a catalyst. I hear in China they've got 50,000 pre-orders, so it should
that was crazy. Well. Yeah. If that's true, that is pretty insane. First day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing rumors that in the next couple of weeks it'll be ready for pre-launch in the United States to pre-order. So I'm fine with it. I think it's a catalyst. I just don't think it's something that people have to be too scared about if they wait.
Yeah.
To buy.
Another advantage that isn't talked about enough is the fact that Tesla is the only car company that is direct to customer, right? So Ford, BMW, they sell to dealerships, right? And those cars can just sit there for months, really. But Tesla has the dynamic capability to do 0% interest offers, to tweak the price like in real time. And no other car company has that advantage. So it is, man, it's such a powerful thing. Also, like the pickup process of like ordering a Tesla is so like flawless and easy. But yeah, that direct to consumer process they have is awesome. And again, not talked about enough.
Yeah, I mean, when I bought my Tesla in November, it was super fun, right? Like we didn't have to go. It was just you get there, okay, ready, come in a week to pick it up. I mean, you actually order it online. You don't even have to talk to a dealer, and then you show up and it's there in 20 minutes. It's like it is one of the more enjoyable car experiences I've ever had. And now that scale with a potential $30,000 car, I think is going to get very exciting for people. Yeah.
Even they also have the what's called the maintenance is in-house as well. So I had an amazing experience with getting a service done, which is weird to even say out loud, because when you think of like going to fix your car, it's such a headache. Literally set the appointment in the app, went over there, dropped it off. They gave me like the Uber credit, went home a couple hours later, just picked it up off the lot. And I was like, holy shit, this is different. Like, I'm not used to this. So having like service in-house, having direct customer, like we've never seen a company, let alone a car company like that, have this type of power. Speaking of new models, have you heard about the rumors? What was it? Was it a JP Morgan talk or panel where they called it the Model Q, which I've seen, like, is it a hatchback, like small, like European type of car? Also heard that internally the nickname is called Redwood for this new model. Have you heard anything about it?
I've heard it's called Model Q, but from my understanding, it's a cybercab with a wheel. That's what I've heard the $25,000 car is going to be.
Interesting.
There's been some videos of it on the road and people have tracked it down, but I don't think any of us have an idea. All I care about as an investor is like on the next earnings in 2 weeks, can Elon say it's coming out soon, right? Is he going to say it's coming out next year? It's like, all right, whatever. But if it's coming out soon, it's like, I mean, if it's going to compete with a Corolla and a Civic, I think people would rather buy the Tesla.
Yeah. And that's like the biggest market, I believe, like that specific segment. And I think in Q1 of 2024, was it Q1 or Q2? I was listening to the earnings call back then. And he was saying like, we have the cheaper model or models coming out next year. And that was kind of glanced over. And I was like, okay, I think everybody started speaking, okay, is that just a cheaper Model Y, cheaper Model 3? but I think we're going to get a new model like this year, if not like in the next 3 months, announced at least. So yeah, I guess we're all ears are going to be on the earnings call. When is the earnings? Is it in
January 29th.
late January 29th?
Yes.
10 days. Cannot wait.
And
What do
Meta
you-
and Microsoft are on the same day, along with PayPal speaking. So
Wow. Do you have any expectations for the Tesla earnings specifically, or are you just kind of waiting for the earnings for the call and seeing what Elon has to say?
you never know what Tesla do. It's just so hard to have expectations. Like,
Yeah.
I really don't know. Like, I think the numbers are going to be okay, but the narrative is going to be if Elon confirms we're getting Robotaxi and FSD in California and Texas, which they said they would do, and the new vehicle in the next 6 months, because they said first half of 2025.
Yeah, it's true.
If we get that confirmation, I think the stock has momentum and enough strength to keep going. It's getting upgraded out the wazoo by all these analysts, so they've kind of at least bought into the story from a price perspective.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't say those things, I could see it going back to 350.
Well, I guess we're going to find out in 10 days, maybe 9 days after this pod comes out. You know what's interesting to me? That after the iRobot event, the stock went down and it seemed like everybody was disappointed, which is like now everybody's pricing it in. Maybe, I don't know how much later it started, but I was like, what a quick turnaround from like the sentiment being so shitty because like, oh, like, I don't know, people just were not impressed. They thought these were just things he was showing that wouldn't come out for the next 10 years. And then when was it? Was it October, the iRobot event in 2024? I believe it was.
Yes, it was the We Robot event in October. Yep.
Yeah, We Robot event, sorry. And then the next month when Trump got elected, it was like up 100%. And so what a turnaround. I mean, it just shows you how much of like a momentum stock this is. Yeah, that was weird to me. I did not expect that because watching that event, it's pretty eye-opening. And again, maybe that's like a biased take, but
Yeah, I think there were some lack of details in the event, and that's why people were
for sure. Yeah.
The technology was still amazing, but the Trump relationship is what most people realized will lead to deregulations in autonomous driving, which then gives the freedom for Tesla to actually execute heavily. And that is something you can't ignore, right? The leader of the free world being best friends with the CEO, you can get shit done that way, you know?
Yeah. Which brings up another good point. So obviously that is a big benefit, but Trump is on record for saying he's going to cut the EV subsidies, right? So there's a lot of back and forth because Elon says like, go ahead and cut them. We shouldn't need them anyway. And then on the other hand, it's like, yeah, but Tesla benefited from these subsidies for so many years.
Yep.
And what do you make of it?
I've listened to Elon's full thoughts on this idea, and I think Elon's right. Elon does not want oil and gas subsidies, therefore he doesn't want any subsidies, right? He's never been a fan of the $7,500 credit, even though it's helped his business. He has enough faith that the cars will be sold regardless of $7,500, especially because all the states have their different incentives as well. And that oil and gas subsidies go away, then EV goes away. Then it's a question of like who's more competitive, and he thinks Tesla wins. He also thinks the other legacy manufacturers, along with the modern EV companies like Rivian, Polestar, et cetera, they can't compete if you take away the $7,500 credit. So I think Elon doesn't care. It might be some short-term pain, but he knows where the end game is. And if the other guys go bankrupt and Tesla's the only one that's left, it's like it's a chess move to me.
Yeah, that's a big criticism as well, because like the other EV companies like Lucid, Rivian that are already struggling to be profitable, I don't know what they're going to do without incentives. And I mean, the simple conclusion is maybe just crash and burn. I don't know, but
yeah.
What about Rivian and Lucid?
I think Lucid has been hyped up by the Saudis, and that's what's keeping them alive. I've never been in one, so can't really speak on the car, but you know, they can't turn a profit. Rivian also can't turn a gross profit. They've been getting some subsidies from the government as well. They got an investment deal that they have like $5 billion from Volkswagen. But yeah, I think Tesla's the winner here. I mean, like, and so people like Rivian cars. They're not bad cars. It's just the unit economics on a car business already are so shitty. To do it in a industry where, as you said, people just aren't that attracted to EVs anymore. You know, where's the market opportunity? They're outside of something like an FSD, which Rivian doesn't have.
Yeah, they're not working on FSD, right? Or are they?
Not to my understanding.
Okay.
I think they would license it from Tesla if they, ever get to that point. But they're not building proprietary data models to do self-driving at scale.
Oof, yeah, that's tough. And I don't think Lucid is either. I mean, I know Lucid is like, from what I've seen like on YouTube and whatnot, I've seen a couple in real life. Like they're nice, luxurious cars, but their unit economics are terrible.
Correct.
And eventually, like, yeah, the money's gonna run out or just funding's gonna stop. We'll see. It's big pockets behind them, but yeah, I just don't even see Lucid as being a competitor. Rivian has like some interesting cult type followers, which is kind of cool to see. Like their branding is really good, but the business end is just not. Speaking of licensing FSD, Elon also mentioned in like Q1 or Q2 that a big OEM was in talks with them. He wouldn't obviously say who, but do you think that's a plausible outcome for car companies to license FSD from Tesla, or do you think that's everybody's going to want to compete and make their own?
I think so. NVIDIA announced this Cosmos platform at CES, which is going to be using synthetic data to train legacy OEMs and manufacturers on real world data. So like you look at a stop sign, the Tesla FSD right now is like capturing all these stop signs so they can train on that. NVIDIA is saying, hey, Toyota, we can synthetically create a stop sign so that your cars can get ready to be able to interact with it in the real world. I think that's cool. I just don't think that beats real world data. And so, yes, I think NVIDIA will try to create this for other manufacturers, and it will work, and they will make a lot of money off of it. It's just what will be better. I think it's going to be FSD. Now, the question is, if NVIDIA can get it to be to the point where it's exactly like real world data, is there going to be a difference? And if there's not, then maybe FSD becomes commoditized. But if there is some level of proprietariness to real world data, then I think Tesla has the edge there.
For sure, on the data end. An interesting point my brother had made up is that Tesla already has so much data that they don't really need anymore. They have the edge, but like they're at the point where like inference, I guess, is more important. Like there's nothing else, even if they get 1 billion more miles, like the edge cases have been documented, like everything's kind of there. They have just so much, like you were saying, the number is crazy how many billions of FSD miles there is. They got there first. Yeah, I don't know what they'll do with that. I doubt they like sell the data or anything. They're definitely going to want to keep it and use it to just get
maybe
to the finish line.
Yeah, maybe license it. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah, that's something I didn't think about, licensing the data. But I think the play is to license FSD. And
yeah, that's what I mean. You license the FSD, correct?
But yeah. And the fact that they could just do it with cameras, there's that big debate: LiDAR versus camera. LiDAR. I think the shortcut is obviously LiDAR. And again, right now it might be better, but being able to, if you're going to license FSD, you can't strap LiDAR onto cars and like have all these sensors that have to be maintained. Putting a couple of cameras in a car, obviously it's a little more complex than that, but that's just the obvious play. And I don't see anybody else. I think GM shut down their cruise program, their self-driving program recently. Yeah. I think we're in the last inning of FSD. Whether it takes 5 years, I don't know. Whether it happens next year, I know Gavin Baker, who is super smart guy in AI, he's a VC, said that in the next 12 months he believes that it's going to happen. Like his quote was like, FSD doubters are going to be humbled greatly or something like that in the next 6 to 12 months. We'll see. I think we're there. One of the last things that I want to talk about is the Elon flywheel, right? We know he has all his businesses, XAI, Grok, Starlink, Tesla. Do you think that is a huge competitive advantage of how he can integrate all of that into specifically, let's say, for Tesla? Yeah. And why do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Elon flywheel is the ability for him to find corresponding and simultaneous synchronicities in all these different ideas that he puts together. So with Grok, it's very obvious that if you can train it off real-time data, incorporate it into X, which he bought, and then use that training in XAI, which is a new startup, you can then build a really amazing foundation large language model that then you can incorporate into the Tesla vehicles. And then people can actually talk to it in a more human-like way. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, Optimus can be building rockets for SpaceX just as much as they're building cars at Tesla. I mean, there's a lot of nuances for how he's kind of conducted this master plan. And I think the reason he bought X was because he needed a distribution, vehicle in this case, which is Twitter, legitimately be able to get the word out about all these ideas without being censored or without being controlled. Because legacy media has always not really loved Elon because he's disrupted their core advertising sector, which is oil and gas. And so there's always been different hit campaigns against them. I mean, the Wall Street Journal trying to figure out who he's sleeping with. It's just like it's stuff that's not. It's not what you want to see the legacy media focus their attention on, but they are. So I think Twitter, in a nutshell, encompasses the ability for him to get the ideas out into the world without worrying about what happens. Neuralink, I'm assuming XAI can be very influential in terms of AI models that help that product succeed, which is literally making people walk again. I mean, the audacity of people to hate someone for their politics, and he's giving life back to people that can, get back up and do things. It's pretty damn incredible. So yeah, I think there's a big flywheel.
It's funny when you sent the Cybertrucks to the fires, the Tesla Q gang was like, oh, that's just a marketing campaign to sell Cybertrucks. I was like, man, you guys just want to spend it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't understand it, but it's sad. Gotta let those peoples be. Yeah. Okay, so just get your final thoughts on Tesla in 2025. Maybe if you want to throw out any projections or the Trump administration's effect on Tesla, just anything in general. What's your take for 2025 for Tesla? Will it grow? Will it plateau? What's going to happen?
If they can launch the new $30,000 car and unsupervised FSD goes live in California and Texas, I think this is over $500 pretty easily. The macro, I think, is in a good situation with CPI coming down in terms of inflation, the 10-year coming down, the US dollar is a little bit elevated. That needs to come down. Rates probably will come down. I mean, I don't see how Tesla's not closing in on 500 by the end of the year, given we were just there a couple of months ago, a couple of weeks ago. If he follows through on what he says he's going to do, on top of the optimist headlines that I do think will be out later in the year as well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would say my price target's 500 by the end of the year, just based on that momentum. Would it make sense from a price of sales PE perspective? Probably not, unless the growth really is there. But if that's not the case, then I think they're going to be good. The one caveat here is that there have been some reports about a credit crisis inside of the automotive sector. Auto delinquencies are at the highest they've ever been. And if there is a world where people just stop buying cars because car prices, or because they can't afford to pay for their cars, and then as a result, car prices come crashing down, which is typically what happens, right? If you look at inventory supply at a lot of these dealerships as well, they got a lot of inventory on the lot. They got to get rid of that inventory. They got to reduce prices. And it's hard to justify paying $45,000 for a Tesla if you can get a Civic for $20,000, $22,000 right now, when realistically it should cost you $27,000, $28,000. That's where the $30,000 car from Tesla really matters, because you got to compete there. But if we have a credit crisis in automobiles, that could hurt their core business. And if it really messes up their core business, then I think the whole narrative part of the business starts to die down. Because if the actual business just cannot produce any meaningful level of sustained growth, forget like expanding growth, it's going to get choppy. Outside of that, I think the narrative is enough for Tesla to show that their technology is real. And by the end of the year, they should be, I think, above $500. Amazing.
What's one last thing? Speaking of rates, it's kind of, I feel like the last one got a little choppy. What do you think happens to rates in 2025?
I think they come down. I think we get 4 cuts, 3 to 4 cuts.
4 cuts.
I think the Fed I think CPI is on its way down. Inflation's on its way down. Shelter is on its way down, which is one of the most important parts of CPI. Automotive, motor vehicle insurance, and new and used car were some of the biggest parts of CPI. That's coming down. And then AI is very deflationary. And there's going to be a lot of deflation. We're exporting not only from China, or importing from China, given their economy is struggling, but along with AI, to the point where we are going to see deflation coming from very, very different areas. It might not happen all at once, but the trends will be there. And when the trends are there, I think the Fed's going to look at this and say, it does not make sense to keep the interest rates as high as they are right now. So I think we're going to get a minimum of 2 cuts. I know people are saying we're not even going to get 1 cut. 3 would be my guess by the end of the year, but I think 2 is probably what we get.
Yeah. I mean, 2025 is starting off super strong. TikTok was banned and reopened in like a 24-hour period. So many things have happened. So I just can't imagine what the rest of the year has for us. So amazing conversation, by the way. Appreciate you for coming on, gracing the very first episode.
I'm happy to be the first guest. This was awesome.
Yes. Hopefully we have you back sometime in the future. And that's it, guys. I'll also link socials down in the description. And if also you want to like say your @ in case people are like on Spotify or something.
Yeah, @Amit is investing on X. And that's where you can find me.
Awesome.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Patience is a talent.
I mean, look, bro, to turn $4,000 into $1 million, you just got to 4x your portfolio 4 times.